Support for the Quebec Charter of Values, presentation made by POL242Cairo2013. The research question for this presentation is, do the perceptions of the Regency of Quebec, political views, and language first learned affect the support for the Quebec Charter of Values? The dataset used for this presentation is Léger 2013. The analytic approach includes Cronbach's alpha, univariate statistics, measures of associations, tau B and tau C, chi-square, ANOVA test, and Sheffield test. The rationale for this presentation stems from three questions. 1. Does the belief in the religiosity of Quebec affect the support for the Quebec Charter of Values? 2. Does the language first learned affect the support for the Quebec Charter of Values? And 3. Do political views affect the support for the Charter of Values? I used 4 questions to create an index for the Charter of Values, or my dependent variable. The first asked whether the Charter of Values was a good or bad idea. The second asked whether it limits individual freedom. The third asked whether it protected Quebecois values. And the fourth asked whether it sent a message of intolerance. The alpha score rendered a 0.8963. The mean was 6.553, and the standard deviation was 1.679. I recoded the index to create 3 categories, low, medium, and high. An increase in the value of the category corresponds to an increase in support towards Charter of Values. The mean indicates that the median indicates that half of the respondents were below or above 3, or the high category, and the model group was high, or 3. There are 3 hypotheses for this presentation, the first being that those who believe that Quebec has provided too much accommodation for religious purposes are more likely to support the Charter of Values. The second was those whose first language learned is French are more likely to support the Charter of Values due to their need to maintain French culture in Quebec and the rest of Canada. And third, those who support the Parti Québécois are more likely to support the Charter of Values due to the fact that the Parti Québécois presented the Charter. The first cross-tabulation of religiosity of Quebec and the Charter of Values indicated that those who believed that religiosity of Quebec was low had low support towards the Charter of Values, and those who believed that the religiosity of Quebec was average or medium had also low support towards the Charter of Values. And lastly, it indicated that those who believed that the religiosity of Quebec was high had high support towards the Charter of Values. This rendered me a tau B score of 0.47361, and the Sheffield test indicated that the mean of the high category differs significantly from that of the low and the medium categories. The second cross-tabulation was the language and support towards the Charter of Values. This indicated that those whose first language learned is French had high support for the Charter of Values, yet those whose first language are either English, other, or English and French had low support towards the Charter of Values. The tau C score was 0.20853, and the Sheffield test was indicate that the mean of English speakers differs the most, yet the mean of the French speakers differs most among other French and English and French. The third cross-tabulation, which was political views and support towards the Charter of Values, indicated that those who supported the Liberal Party or another party had low support towards the Charter of Values, yet those who supported the Parti Québécois, the Coalition Avenir Québécois, and the Québec Solidaire had high support towards the Charter of Values. This rendered a tau C measure of 0.35453, and the Sheffield test indicated that the means of the Liberal Party and another party differed significantly, while the mean of the Parti Québécois differed the most between the Parti Québécois, the CAQ, and the Québec Solidaire. The measures of association for the first hypothesis rendered a tau B score of 0.47361. This is supposedly worrisomely high, however, it indicates that there is a good relationship between both variables. For the second hypothesis, I had a tau C score of 0.20853, which was a moderate relationship. However, it indicated that it's also good. And the last one was for the last hypothesis, the tau C score was 0.35453. There was a really strong relationship between both variables. The chi-square p-value for all cross-tabulation was low. The null hypothesis was rejected, yet for the ANOVA value, it was also low, and it indicated that there is 1 in 1,000 chance that these relationships were due to sampling error. For conclusion, the null hypothesis was rejected, and according to the measures of association, there was a significant relationship between all independent variables and the dependent variables. For further research, this topic is fairly new, therefore finding literature on the subject is difficult. Also, a representation of Canadian and international views would provide a good perspective.